Prime as well. My name is Lexis Bill, and I look forward to these. Good evening and welcome to Personality Profile here on Joy 99.7 FM, on Joy News on TV, and on Joy Prime as well. My name is Lexis Bill, and I look forward to these conversations. So we get to sit down with amazing people doing stuff, great stuff on the continent of Africa and the world at large. Yeah, and this evening I've got one amazing woman that you'd want to listen to here on Personality Profile. So on behalf of my team, I'll say welcome. You need to sit down and kick your feet up on the couch and probably grab a drink because it's going to be one very interesting conversation, and we need you to come along with us. Now follow our pages on social media as well, Joy Entertainment, and you get to see all the videos as well live. Now, this one is awesome. I'll tell you about her, and for me, it's not just her grit and her determination for personal excellence, but it's also her selflessness and her mission to see the youth of Africa take their rightful place in the quest for Africa's socioeconomic development. She will stop at nothing to represent a section of the continent that is creative, powerful, and agents of social change. Yeah, she's very affable, and her associates have only good things to say about her, actually. Tozai Kaguvi, who's the founder of Tinatenda Trading, puts her personality in apt words, I tell you. She says, Chido is simply phenomenal. She's enthusiastic, energetic, creative, and inspirational. She has the uncanny ability to turn lukewarm projects into successful projects. She's a go-getter with the skills crucial in a startup where she's able to start with nothing and deliver outstanding results. I wish these were said about me. Yeah, but this guest of mine is a banker and a risk professional. She's a Mandela Washington Fellow as well, President Obama's Young African Leaders Initiative, Jali, of course. She's a climate reality leader, former consultant to Minister of Youth and Sport and Arts in Zimbabwe. She's a former Global Shippers Curator, the World Economic Forum. And in 2021, she was appointed by the chairperson of the African Union Commission as the youngest diplomat in the chairperson's cabinet to lead on youth affairs in the 55 member states. Yes. She's the African Union Chairperson Special Envoy on Youth. Chido Cleopatra Mpemba is my guest. Hello, Chido.
Hi, Lexis.
How are you?
I'm good. Wow, I feel so humbled, to hear you reading that.
Yes, you're amazing. You're awesome. I need to say kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And you did show up in style, guys. Look at that. She's glowing. She literally had to bring the sun out.
Thank you, Lexis.
You look good in that.
Thank
and
you
I must say, welcome to Ghana again. This is your second visit, isn't it?
It's my second
And
visit.
I hope this time you are actually enjoying my country.
I am loving it. The first time I came, it was one of the first missions in my, recently appointed role as a Special Envoy in Youth.
Yeah.
I came to Ghana in December. At such a wonderful time. Unfortunately, I caught COVID.
During the time?
During the time.
Oh, dear.
So I was, had to isolate for about 3 weeks. But the hospitality was just so amazing, and the people in Accra were just so amazing. During the time I was in self-isolation, away from family, in a new environment.
Yes.
That when the opportunity arose for me to come back, I was like, no, Accra, Ghana, I will come back.
Yes, yes, and good to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm happy that you're enjoying it this time. Summertime. I told you earlier that it's summer all around, all year round here in Ghana, so you love the sun, absolutely. Anyway, but what brings you here this time? Tell us about it.
Okay, so what brings me to Ghana this time around is because I'm currently embarking on a 60 days listening tour. This is a campaign within my office of the Youth Envoy to engage with young people on the ground, get to hear their views on various issues pertaining to, what affects them as young people across the continent, but also looking at the best practices that, different countries bring and perspectives when it comes to how we should drive the youth agenda across the continent. So it just so happens that Ghana is actually the very first country I've come to visit as part of my 60 days youth engagement tour and campaign to meaningfully engage with young people on the ground.
Wow.
Yeah.
What makes you do this actually? What made you decide that, okay, let me go around and listen to the youth of Africa?
I think it's because often we like to talk about solutions when it comes to young people, bring solutions on the table, but actually not include them in the process of, bringing those solutions out to the policymakers. So for me, it's a decision that I made to say that getting into this role, the first point of call is to actually engage with young people, because after all, I'm representing the young people on the continent, and if I'm going to represent them and speak on their behalf, then I need to ensure that I've intentionally and meaningfully also got that opportunity to come on the ground and speak to them. And, we unite with that one voice too.
From what you said, do you see any barriers to the impact of young people in the development of Africa?
I think there's so many barriers, and I think one of the challenges that comes with this is that it's such a small space. And I often say that, we have so many youth groups, so many volunteers, so many young people doing amazing things, but because the space is so small, even including the opportunities that arise in this space, going from even access to funding, we find that most of the time young people then end up in competition because of the space that we have, which is so small. Okay. And these are some of the barriers because, the opportunities are limited. But, we then have to come together as young people to make that greater impact. And instead of, finding ourselves in competition, we find ourselves in collaboration for a greater impact. Yeah.
You've traveled around, probably now almost all the African countries, right? How many have you been to now?
Wow, I cannot even keep count now, to be honest, but I'm still in the process of...
You need to let me keep that data for you because we need it.
Wow, yeah, but it's been an amazing experience. I still have more countries to visit. I mean, I'll be going to, the next African country I'll be visiting is Nigeria, which is also part of the listening tour. I've still yet to go to a number of countries. Yeah.
So far, you have engaged with a lot of the young people of Africa. What will you say are the low-hanging fruits? What are those things that you think that we can actually leverage on and actually maximize the impact of the youth in Africa?
I think it has to start with policy advocacy, because when you talk about solutions and bringing concrete implementations for various stuff, it has to start with, advocacy. And I found that being a low-hanging fruit because being in this position has given me access to those platforms to lobby at high level. I'll give you an example. Recently, we're at the African Union Head of State Summit on humanitarian issues. And prior to that summit being held, I convened young people in Nairobi, and we held our own pre-youth summit. In this pre-youth summit on humanitarian issues, we came up with recommendations, and we put in a report that was able to present to our policymakers, and it was incorporated in the overall summit where the head of states got to meet. So I found that being in this role, that is one of the things would be a low-hanging fruit, has been where we actually meaningfully contribute with the voice of the young people and lobby at at policy level. I could go on with various examples. Maybe just one more is when I was in Burundi, and in Burundi we convened on a youth continental dialogue on peace and security issues across Africa. And in there, we went through the continental framework on peace and security. And we made a lot of recommendations, including that we should now have an annual event on youth and security issues in Africa. We made recommendations to the continental framework. We also lobbied that there should be a side, and as much as there's so many summits going on in the African Union where member states convene, but there should be one specifically that focuses on youth. So, we had the opportunity to present that to the president in terms of these are the needs of young people. And, our ask was to say, when you convene in the high level meetings, can you also include some of these things? And I must say, at the Humanitarian Summit, I was proud to see that most of the issues that we had presented to the head of states, they brought them up amongst their peers, amongst one another, in terms of what they think we should look at when it comes to policy level too.
That's brilliant, actually. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I'm just worried right now because I've literally put you in work mode. So let me just ease you out of work mode. We actually want to get to know you. For me, what's inspirational is that you're in a very, very influential position, very strategic position as well. Communing and dining with the decision makers and the world leaders, and bridging the gap between the young and the old. You're actually our icon as young people. But how did you get there? Let's get to delve into it. Let's start from where you were born, because I know you're from Zim.
I'm from Zimbabwe.
One of my favorite countries, Zimbabwe.
Wow.
Tell us about where you're from.
Well, so I'm from Zimbabwe. I was born in Zimbabwe. I lived in Zimbabwe, did my primary school, my high school in Zimbabwe. I moved for a bit when I did my university in South Africa, the University of Cape Town.
Okay.
And, at that time, I actually studied human resources, and I was quite passionate because, it was something within our family. My mom also studied human resources, and I just thought, when I grow up, I want to be like mom. And, I did that, the degree in human resources.
Okay.
At the time, I then applied for an opportunity at the bank. I worked at Standard Chartered Bank for about...
You're moving a little too fast.
Let's
go back to Zim. Let's go back to Zimbabwe.
Gotcha.
Which part of Zimbabwe did you grow up? Harare?
In Bulawayo.
In Bulawayo.
Yes, so I grew up in Bulawayo.
4-5 hours drive up, right?
Yes, about 5 to 6 hours drive from Harare.
I did that drive.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's got a beautiful place as well. How was growing up like?
Growing up was quite interesting. Because we actually, my parents grew up in Harare, and you come to the Bulawayo, and you have to learn in terms of the different dynamics and culture and language, because I spoke Shona, and in Bulawayo they mostly speak Ndebele. So it also provided that opportunity to get to learn. Okay. Bulawayo is a very small city as well, very neat, very small, very family orientated. So it was quite a small city that I think even when I moved from Bulawayo to go to university in Cape Town, it was quite a huge shock, being used to being in a very small city and growing up in that space.
Would you say you were from a privileged family?
I would say that my family worked hard to make sure that I got the opportunities, and access to quality education. I'll be honest. There were challenges along the way, even with the economy. We had challenges at times where it even comes to school fees, where you're like, okay, my school fees need to be paid. Even in university, I had to work. From the first year I was in university, I worked. I think the moment I was in first year, by the second week of my first year in university, I was working at a call center. So I'd actually go to school during the day, and in the evenings I'll take shifts in the call center. Eventually I also started to take some part-time jobs within the university. I think at some point I had like 4 or 5 jobs whilst I was doing my first year degree.
Wow. How did you manage that? Did it affect your studies in any way?
Funny enough, it didn't. I think because there was that flexibility as well. Being a student, so you take shifts. For example, at some point I was a dining room monitor. So whilst you're dining room monitor, you would actually have your books, and you then be able to study whilst you're doing that job. In the call center, same thing, because you'd wait to receive calls in this call center. So in between that, it's in the evening, you take some time to read and do your assignments whilst you waited.
Any lessons you picked up from there? Probably the lesson of the skill of multitasking or something of the sort?
That was one of the skills. I always say this, that we tend to underestimate every experience that we get. But being in this role, even moving from being in university and going to Standard Chartered Bank, where I worked for a bit, I realized that all the experience I'd gained from all these roles, played a role, even in interpersonal skills, multitasking, working under pressure. That also really played a role to shape me into the person that I am today and be able to deliver.
What was your childhood dream?
What was my childhood dream? That's actually a very good question. Interesting. At some point, I saw myself getting into the media industry.
Oh,
yeah, getting into media. I was so I remember growing up, I actually used to write, come up with ideas. Okay, if I'm a presenter or media personality, this would be my show. Or think about, okay, how about starting a local movie? And always at this creative nature, and I always thought that's what would happen. But as well, there's always this tradition when you're growing up in terms of the profession you get into. And I think I fell into that pressure, I'll be honest, to say, okay, what would, should I go for the future, media or being into corporate, professional HR? Not saying that media is not professional, it's very professional, but I'm talking about normally, I don't know if it's just where I grew up, but normally there was always this perception growing up, especially when you're younger, in terms of the opportunities that come being in the creative industry, which has now changed, and I'm really glad to see that.
I see.
Yeah.
So, I'm actually now thinking of how we can make your dreams come true. Okay? Because I don't think it's all lost, this whole media thing that you wanted to do. Because the African Youth Envoy could have a series or a bit of a media clip that shows updates on what she's doing. And she delivers it herself. Don't you think so?
That's actually a great idea.
Yeah.
I'll really consider that.
So we can still have you do your dream presenter gig.
Yes,
while
that's
still
actually a
being
good idea.
the youth envoy for the African. Yeah, we could have that happen.
That could definitely work.
Well, I'm glad. I'm living your dream for you, and I gotta be honest, it's beautiful. it's good, having the lights and camera on you.
Wow,
I
that's
see.
amazing.
So then you now go to school and you study HR.
Yeah, so I go to school, I study HR. After school, I get this opportunity at work at Standard Chartered Bank. Initially, I actually applied to join their Human Resources graduate program. It was an international graduate program. And I made it all the way to the final round, but unfortunately, they couldn't take me at the time because I had not done my master's degree. And they said that with the international graduate program in Human Resources, you needed to have a master's degree. So after that, I'm like, okay, let me go back to start job hunting again. And then suddenly, I think it was like after 1.5 weeks, then they gave me a call. And they said, you know what, unfortunately, we could not give you that role because you didn't have a master's. But because prior for you coming to this interview, you were calling, I would call Standard Chartered Bank, I would write on LinkedIn to everyone, the human resources manager, everyone, to say, I really love to work for the bank. I just want to learn more about the bank. That even by the time I went to the interview, they knew about me. And even afterwards, when I did not get the role, they were like, no, we need her to come back. So, they were like, we want to consider you for another role. It's not HR, it's not the international graduate program since you don't have a master's, but it was a local graduate program in Zimbabwe. And I was like, okay, it's worth trying out. So I actually went and I got interviewed again. And within 2 days, they came with a news to say, you got the job.
Wow.
Then I was like, it's an opportunity for me to learn. It wasn't at the time because I thought I really want to get into human resources, but this gave me the opportunity to actually work across the bank. I was in retail banking, so I had an opportunity through the graduate program for 2 years to rotate in the various departments in banking. And from there, I then grew a passion for risk, and I ended up in risk, interesting enough. So I then joined the risk department. I worked as a country risk lead, focusing mostly on operational risk and credit risk. And I decided to do an MBA since I'd taken that route and I was now in banking. I was like, okay, it'll be good for me to do an MBA to complement that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now that's interesting. But even before we move on, there's a lesson in there that I really want you to highlight for young people who are listening. The persistence that you showed in trying to reach out to almost everybody you know in the bank or on LinkedIn and all of that, keep going even though the door was closed to you. There's a lesson in there, isn't it?
Definitely, it's true. And for me, it's just one thing I always say to young people: never give up. And don't underestimate what you do, because I told you my story. I was in university having 4 jobs, working as a dining hall monitor and the call center. But I still brought that experience into the bank, and I said, look, I'm coming with passion, I'm dedicated, and I've learned some of the skills that I'm going to bring to the bank through the roles I've had previously as a student and working part-time.
Wow. What lessons did you learn after taking up those roles and working in that corporate setting? And especially as well because you were not doing your traditional HR, which you learned about. You now had to adapt quickly and learn something new, got introduced to a new field, risk. You had to learn and get on top of it.
True, but what I found is there's always a way that everything interlinks, I'll be honest. Even working within the risk space, you get to work with people. So there was a bit of human resources coming into that.
Yeah.
I brought in that passion and that experience. So by the way, I majored in human resources and training, development and evaluation. So I started bringing that within my role in the risk department. I would actually come up with different risk training programs, that I would also, be rolled out in our department for my colleagues. So there was also a lesson in that you can bring in whatever experience, whatever passion that you have in your current role. I could go on and on, but I had such a passion still for people. For me, I call it people skills. And every time I got an opportunity to do beyond my role within risk, I'd go ahead and do it. I mean, even with climate change, when I got an opportunity to train as a climate reality leader, I noticed that there are so many risks that are now involved when it comes to climate change, even in the way that we're lending in the bank. So when I applied for this opportunity, that's exactly what I put in my application to say, look, I'm coming from a finance background and I want to learn more about climate change because I believe that there are risks involved in climate change that will affect the banking sector and affect our lending. And I got an opportunity to then train under the former President of the United States, President Al Gore, former Vice President Al Gore, through the Climate Reality Project. And, you know, I was attached through that project in the United States to train. When I came back, it was, again, new experience that I brought into my role because we started focusing more on, you know, environmental risk, social risk, and I started seeing how that interlinks to climate change. Not only that, it also came with a bit of an aspect of, you know, how climate change is affecting young people. You know, because it was a holistic program. I started thinking more about how can we actually provide education, training, and raise awareness to young people on climate change. So in as much as I was not bringing that into the bank, I was doing a lot of voluntary work. I would go to communities, visit orphanages, start teaching about climate change, and also donate trees as a to, you know, climate action, for climate action.
Good stuff,
Yeah.
good stuff. Let's get to the journey to the AU. Where did that start? I mean, you had a good job in banking. You were making a lot of money. What did you need, Cheeto?
Wow, that's interesting. So also, just to be clear, when I got the role at the African Union, I was no longer with the bank.
Yes, I get that.
So you find that I was in the bank for 7 years. I worked in Zimbabwe, but I would also support other countries like South Africa and, you know, Kenya. I would also work with our Kenyan team. And I got to a point where I just wanted to explore more. And I just thought, okay, I think the time is now to leave the bank. At that time, they also had opportunities for, like, you know, retrenchment packages and everything that was going on. And I said, you know what, I'd actually like to volunteer myself onto this program because I'd learned so much from the bank and I felt that it was time for me to spread my wings and take what I've learned in the bank, you know, out there. So fast forward, I'll be so honest with you that when I made that decision, I really didn't have a plan, the next game plan. I just took the risk and I said, I'm going to do this.
Wow.
But what then happened was, you know, that was done, but I was still doing a lot of voluntary work. At that time, I was a curator for the Global Shapers community, which is an initiative of the World Economic Forum. And I came up with this idea of hosting town halls. So we'd have town halls, you know, with our policy makers and sitting with young people. We called it the Road to Davos Town Hall because we always had it before Davos and would, you know, model and shape what was happening at Davos. So I remember in one of them, we invited the Minister of Youth Sports and asked to speak. But unfortunately, she wasn't available at the time as she was out of the country. And I said, okay, not a problem, but can I please ask for an appointment with her so that I can brief her on what happened in this town hall because it involved young people and she's a Minister of Youth. And I managed to get that appointment. So fast forward, you know, we went very prepared, which is another lesson that you should always be prepared. You know, so we went really prepared. We had our briefing notes, I had a report. I went to the team, we had a, you know, everything from a cameraman, everything. We're just so prepared for us to have that meeting with her. And then I got in and I told who I was, you know, started telling her this is the work I've been doing in the community, some climate change, what we're doing with Global Shapers, gave a report on the town hall. And from there, we actually just started working together. I remember the day after, I get a call and you know, the call is, you know what, I would like to work with you. You know, I just want to know, what are you looking to do? And I just said, you know what, I'll be honest, I just left my job in the bank. I was taking a, you know, a short break just to see what I'll move into next. And I was also exploring to see if I should visit other countries across Africa and get to learn, you know, in other countries and get that experience as well. So we started working together and then COVID happened. So now imagine when the process of working together, I planned to actually go and work in her office and then COVID happened.
And this was in Zimbabwe?
This was in Zimbabwe. So, COVID happened. In the middle of COVID happening, we then came up with this idea to actually launch a program, which we call the United Program for Artists and Athletes in Zimbabwe. We called it APAZIM. And, she gave me that opportunity to spearhead that initiative as one of her key initiatives. Also, being a World Olympian and, also having this mandate for as the Minister of Youth, Sports and Arts. So again, I learned a lot through that journey, and I was consulting for her, and from there I then got another opportunity. This was through the World Economic Forum, where they were putting together a task force for the Global Shapers community, and this was more to look at how they could co-design and co-create their impact areas, and as they'd also just reached their 10-year anniversary. Now when I was in the process of that, I just said, okay, I think now I get an idea in terms of where I want to go to next, I had this experience in the bank. I've done a bit of climate change. Now I was working specifically when it comes to youth-related matters through the Minister of Youth, moving on as part of this task force for the Global Shapers community, which is also a youth-led initiative under the World Economic Forum.
Right.
And from there, I was like, okay, I've done this. I've consulted. I've done a lot of voluntary work. I'm now ready to get back, into the working world. And I was looking more into what can actually bring impact to communities, what can bring impact on the continent. Then I came across this role being advertised, and I said, you know what? I would actually love to give this a shot, but for me it comes with the passion for people, honestly, and just the passion of wanting to bring about change and having impact on the continent. And I applied like anyone else. I literally just applied for the role. And, of course, at the time I was like, oh, what are the chances? I'm coming from the corporate sector background, and there's so many young people doing amazing things on the continent.
Yeah.
But, when the opportunity presented itself, I just made sure I was ready for it. And I presented myself, and I spoke about if I was in this role, what I would do.
Yeah.
I presented my manifesto to the panel, to the regional economic communities, and they voted. And after that, I got the news that I'd been selected as a youth envoy.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's I'm just picking up all these lessons from your story, and I'm thinking that it takes a lot of confidence to literally just jump out of the corporate setting without a plan and say, look, I'm going to swim regardless. With all that I've gathered behind me, I'm going to make sure I succeed. I don't know whether that was your thought process.
I would say that, honestly, I was scared along the way, but I knew that I had no choice. I had to, swim, like you said, and I had to make sure at the end of it, things work out. So yeah, it was quite a journey. There was a lot of fear, a lot of, it wasn't as smooth as I said, because, in between then when I did decide that, I'm ready to get back into, in the working world, and I was looking for opportunities and I was applying for opportunities. This is not the only opportunity I applied for. Before that, I think I applied for 6 or 7, where you get into the initial stages, you do the interviews and don't get the role, unfortunately, and get in a mode of depression. I think at some point I was actually depressed. We don't talk a lot about that mental health, but at some point I was so depressed. I was like, okay, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Now I'm ready. I'm applying for opportunities aligned to youth empowerment, to sustainability, and causes that are dear to my heart, but that opportunity wasn't coming. But I think everything happens for a reason, and God had a reason for it, for me to be in this specific role for such a time as this. Yeah.
I see. So what really did you think, or what was your thought process when you were not getting these offers, these things you were applying for, these jobs you were applying for, and you were not getting them?
I think for me, it was trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. And it's something that often happens, that we don't often give feedback when, people apply for jobs and they don't make it, even if they make it to the final round, but they don't get the role in the end. And it was a lesson learned for me, because I said, you know what, the moment I'm ever in a position where I'm trying to also work with people or recruit people, it's important to give that feedback. So for me, it was just a matter of, I would constantly go back and try and figure out what did I do wrong. I would even write back to say, you know what, thank you for the opportunity. It's quite unfortunate that I didn't get this role in the end. However, I would like to know what can I improve on for the next time. And I would never get a response. So it was, but I also understand, they're probably dealing with a lot of people and there's all that pressure. So for me, it was a bit of, yeah, just to say, okay, maybe try one more time. Try one more time. Also get to learn from people. I'll take time to learn every role that I'd apply for. I'll take time to really learn about the role and also learn from people that are in the same perhaps industry and have a good understanding of how things work.
What did family think when you resigned and you were now job hunting, as it were?
Wow, so it's quite interesting because my parents are very supportive. Like we're actually just two in my family, my sister and I. I'm the last born, but they were very supportive. Interesting enough, and also because at the time we're actually in the process of working on a family business. So I just said, whilst I'm figuring out my next move, can I actually volunteer my time in this family business? And they just said, we'll give you that time to really figure yourself out. And also because at the time, COVID also then happened, and there was just so much going on at once. But they were very supportive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And now you apply for the role of the African Youth Envoy.
No.
And you get a response that you've been voted.
Yeah.
For it.
Yeah.
How did you feel, and what did you do?
Honestly, I was in so much shock. I was in so much shock when I got the news. And also because I couldn't really say anything because I had to wait for the public announcement to do. So I think initially they thought, okay, she'll also get to see it in the public announcement. And then they figured, no, it'll be good for her to also just for me to know beforehand. So I think there was that debate that should it be a surprise and you get to then I think eventually no, let us give you heads up. So when they gave me heads up, they were like, we're letting you know, but it's not yet for public knowledge. You have to wait for the official announcement to be made by the chairperson, because they had to make it on the 1st of November on Youth Day. But before that, funny enough, the news actually leaked.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, it leaked, I think,
Who
a
was
day.
responsible for that?
I wonder. I think like a day. Was it a day before it went out to the media? It had been posted on a social media and had actually been tagged. And then they had to get back to me and give me heads up to say, we just noticed that it's leaked, but we have it under control. And I was like, okay. And then now, just the excitement of waiting, a bit of anxiety as well, like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen next, after this announcement. And it was so overwhelming, honestly. It's almost like your life changes overnight. Yeah.
I can actually imagine you trying to zip your mouth, like, I don't have to say this, I have to keep this to myself, Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite interesting.
So tell us what the role involves now.
Okay, so what this role involves is I'm sitting in the chairperson's cabinet, working closely with the chairperson of the African Union Commission, but specifically on youth-related matters as the Special Envoy in Youth. And with the African Union, it's made up of the 55 member states. So that also requires for me to represent young people within these 55 member states, as well as youth in the diaspora. I'd also mention that this is a I would say fairly new role. It's only 4 years, since we had the first youth envoy, my predecessor, who set a good foundation for this role as well. And I'm the second youth envoy. So you find that there's also room for us young people, because I always say this is not my role, it's the role for young people. There's that room for us to shape it into what we'd like it to become, which is why I'm also calling this year the year of setting the foundation, the year of setting the great foundation, because it entails us setting that foundation in terms of what would be the key deliverables within my role. It's a political appointment as well. So, lobbying for young people, constantly ensuring that they're given the spaces that they need, engaging with young people, ensuring that young people in marginalized communities, that their needs are also heard on the decision-making table too. And also mainstreaming youth activities, because, we have a lot of initiatives that are running, even within the African Union, within the various departments. When it comes to member states, you find that there's so many things happening with regards to youth-related issues. But, bringing about unity for young people across the continent, be it even in different political backgrounds, different sectors. But how can we sit down and unite as young people and speak with one voice? Yeah.
So the mission for the AU Youth Envoy focuses on 4 priority areas, like you put it: inclusive participation, advocacy, partnerships, and harmonization. I'm interested in the advocacy bit and which areas of advocacy you're passionate about, and and you want to champion more?
Okay, I think the areas of advocacy that I'm passionate about, I want to champion more is number one, I think youth livelihoods is very important. And funny enough, we recently rolled out a youth survey under my office, a youth survey, and that's the most response that we got from young people when they had to vote, looking at youth livelihoods. We also looked at climate change, economic development, but when you look at youth livelihoods, and youth livelihoods is often linked to how can we ensure that we create a space where young people's needs are met, be it in entrepreneurship and education, be providing employment opportunities, being, in terms of, the basic needs of young people across the continent. So I'm really, really passionate about that. I mean, we often talk about how young people make the largest population on the continent. So it's very important that their needs are met across the continent, and we constantly advocate for them at decision-making decision-making tables.
So you're having these town hall meetings and engagements across the continent.
Yeah.
The reason why you're actually in Ghana today, and you had that event earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what were the takeouts from that engagement?
Okay, so the takeouts from that engagement, we specifically focus on the thematic areas that I hope to, roll out as part of my mandate when we move to the plan of action. And one of them was on education. We spoke a lot on education through our breakout groups. And what has come out the most as recommendations from young people is that we constantly need to look at reviewing our education policies. We also need to look at policies that are friendly towards young people, access to basic education and affordable education for young people, innovation in education. Because again, I think when you look at the issue of unemployment, which is very big across the continent, there's so many, reasons for that unemployment, in addition to, economies across the continent, but also looking at times as a gap between the skills young people have and what's required on the market. And it's also the gap with regards to the jobs that are available, and not actually creating a space where young people can be entrepreneurs and actually be the ones to create that employment. So these are the issues that were coming out from the town hall. What we're using for a town hall is a three-way model, focusing on what we did today. That was a part of youth engagement, to get to hear from young people, ensure that their recommendations form part of our final report that will shape the plan of action for the office. In addition to that, also community engagement. So we went to communities today. We got to visit young girls that are been victims. Some of them have been victims of gender-based violence. We got to hear from them. Some of them were a teenage, were victims of, teenage pregnancy, of rape, and so many really sad stories, really. But, that is also part of the engagement tool, to ensure that we leave no one behind and actually go to the communities and get to hear from them. Lastly, it's also going to have to do with political commitments. Once I've heard from young people through this town hall, through the engagements in communities, how can we ensure that we advocate now at policy making level, at decision making level, and ensure that they also get to hear about what young people are faced with and what young people are recommending, and get them to commit, to driving this youth agenda in country as well as across the continent when they engage with their peers.
Good stuff. So diversity and inclusion is at the heart of many conversations now.
Yeah.
Even now, a lot of the corporate organizations are making it a functional unit. D&I is like a big deal now. And I know some bit of inclusion conversations came up in the town hall as well.
They did.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, and you actually even worked with the diversity and inclusion team as well as Standard Chartered,
yes,
right?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when it comes to diversity and inclusion, where are we in Africa? And the youth in Africa?
And the youth in Africa. Honestly speaking, I think we still have a long way to go, especially when you look at the inclusion of youth with disabilities, when you look at the inclusion of youth from marginalized communities, even just digital access. When we sit on these tables and we're having town halls and we're streaming live, it's not reaching everyone, which is why it's important to actually make sure that we go on the ground and we ensure that their voice is also included and that access is also provided to them. So I would say that we still really have a long way to go with that. I mean, of course, along the way we're making progress. Even as the African Union, we have programs that are focused on women as well, with women from disadvantaged backgrounds. We have a special envoy women, peace and security, and she's also been going on missions, talking to young people, to young women, and women from marginalized communities too. So we still we're on this journey, but I will admit that we need to continue on this journey, and there's a long way to go. Yeah.
Of course, the youth are very central to the development of Africa.
Yeah.
And people like you motivate the larger community, and a lot of young people would want to contribute. Now, from where you sit, if there's a young person who's listening to us right now, is motivated to actually help change in any way, where do they start from?
I would say that they should start in their communities. It's very important. Start at grassroots level, start in your communities, because it's very important that you also connect with people on the ground and people within the communities and your peers amongst one another. That's the beginning. Start within your communities and bring your voices together, because there's so much strength and power when you speak as one and you bring the voices together on the table. And from there, advocate even at national level. Get yourself involved even at the different youth groups that are within, the national structures, And of course, do not limit yourself just to that. There are also opportunities on the global platforms to ensure that you speak. But again, it also goes back to how are we ensuring that young people also get to hear about those opportunities and we share that information. It's also just as important, and it's a responsibility that's just not for young people. Yeah. It's a responsibility for all of us. It's a responsibility for me, and ensuring that they get to hear about the access, the information, and the right way that they can ensure that their voices form part of impact on the decision-making table.
Well, if you're just tuned in, we're having a great conversation with the African Union Chairperson Special Envoy on Youth, Ms. Chido Cleopatra Mpemba, and I've enjoyed this conversation. But let's get personal a little bit. What drives you? What's your personal inspiration? What is it?
What is my personal inspiration? What drives me is just the change I want to see on the continent. The narrative I want to see for Africa. We talk about the Africa that we want, right? And that's an Africa that's people driven, if we think about it. And for me, what drives me and what inspires me is to see that change, that positive change in Africa. That when you talk about Africa, we see development, we see change, we see innovation, moving from that narrative of, challenges, but actually being very well developed. And bringing about change and solutions, not just on our continent, but being the best practice globally. Yeah.
Who inspires you?
Who inspires me? Wow, I have so many people that inspire me, honestly. So I don't think I'll zone this out on a specific person, but maybe I'll zone it on specific groups of people. Okay. I think I'm inspired by youth activists that are doing an amazing job across the continent. I'll give an example. Just recently when I was at the Commonwealth meeting, and I got to be part of the Kigali summit, and I met young people that are advocating for, within the public health space, they're advocating for, awareness on neglected tropical diseases, such as malaria, and who would have known? Like for me, I got there and I was like, wow, I've learned so much, that there's still so much across the continent that we can do, and there's so much that we shouldn't neglect. And this is a group of young people that are coming together to advocate, youth combating neglected tropical diseases, youth against malaria, and for me, that inspired me to see youth groups that are zoning in and being focused on particular issues that are pertinent across the continent, I'm really inspired when I see young people just taking that stand and taking that move. Across the continent. I could give so many examples. I think because of time, I'll just focus this on that.
What's the biggest lesson this journey has taught you?
Wow. The biggest lesson this journey has taught me is that there's still so much to learn. That's actually a lesson in itself for me. Because, normally when we get into these positions, I was like, yeah, I got to figure it out. This is my plan. But at times it won't work out the way you'd want it to, And for me, it was, there's actually so much room to learn. to be able to deliver, you're actually also going to have to learn and be open to learning and be open to being corrected. So for me, that has been that, and be patient, really. And also that it's okay to break down. I think in my first month of being in this role, I cried every night because I was so overwhelmed. It's something that is new, and you're trying to get a headway, and at times things do not work the way you wanted them to work. But for me, it was that lesson to say, it's actually okay to break down. If you want to break down, we don't talk a lot about mental issues, but it's okay to break down, and for me, that was very important to know that I can be vulnerable, and I'm also human at the end of the day. And as much as I'm in this position, I'm also just a person. I'm someone's sister, someone's friend, and stuff like that.
Makes me want to find out, what are the challenges of this role?
What are the challenges of this role? I think the challenges come in that it's a huge responsibility, Lexis, like 55 member states. It's a huge responsibility, and you find that you find out so much from young people on the ground that at times it's so heartbreaking. Issues to do with unemployment, issues to do with gender-based violence, issues to do with access to education, and you get to hear young people's stories across the continent, and you just want to bring the solution for everyone, but you find that it's going to be a process, it's going to be a journey, and it's going to need for us to unite, not only as young people, but also, having the private sector involved, the public sector involved, to move this agenda forward. And the challenge for me has come in that it cannot be done overnight, and it cannot be done all at once. It's a process. But I wish I could just do it overnight and say, you know what, this is a solution. Yes, we but so it's been in that, it takes a lot of patience. I think another challenge that I would say is, it's also, I see it also as an opportunity, but for now also speak about it as a challenge in that, like I mentioned, it was a newly created role. So now, in it being a newly created role, you're pretty much, there was a foundation, yes, that was set, but you're constantly or continuously having to build on that foundation and ensure that, you build a team, you build the structures, everything in place for the role, for it to be continuous. You look at, the best practices, what worked out. You look at what can be done better, for the future. So again, there's a lot. Yeah.
What's your greatest fear?
What is my greatest fear? I think my greatest fear is to fail for young people. Not to fail for myself, but for young people.
Why not to fail for yourself?
I think because, how can I answer that? Why not to fail for myself, but to fail for young people? It's because of the role that I'm in. I'm responsible for young people across the continent. So if I failed them out, actually would have also failed myself, But looking at it holistically, to say that being in such a position and where the opportunities to make that change, and not being able to do it for young people because there's a constituency and they've put their trust in me to deliver on their behalf and to speak and be a voice for them. Yeah.
What's your biggest regret?
What is my biggest regret? Not getting into media. At some point in my life. I'll say at some point in my life.
I thought we found a solution, didn't we? We hacked it, didn't we? No. I mean, and that's not something I'd love to help you out on as well, because I think that it would be very good as well to document all these amazing things that you're doing. Going around the continent, some of these engagements as well. It would be good to actually have them live forever. And maybe your TV show or your media, stints could make that happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad that you shared all of these. But what would you like to be remembered for?
Well, what would I like to be remembered for? I'd like to be remembered of having built part of the story for young people and leaving a legacy for young people. Stuff that had never been done before, but we're going to see as a change, as a history, and as a legacy for young people across the continent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you have a very, very tough job. You have a very, very demanding job, and you're all over the place. You're traveling all the time. What do you do for fun?
Wow, what do I do for fun? So actually, I love listening to music.
Ah,
I love listening to music. So in
Okay.
between work, I'll listen to music. Even when I'm with my team, wherever we go, we're in the car, moving from, you know, the hotel room to go to an event, we will have music in the car.
what's your kind of music?
I love Afro beats.
Is it?
I love
So which
Afro
artist
beats.
is on your playlist now?
Oh, which artist on my playlist right now? I'm listening to, there's this song called Weekend. I'm
Okay.
trying to remember the artist. I think it must be easy, but it's called Weekend. Yeah, it's something like rotatey, something weekendy, but it's called
We need to
Weekend.
look it up and see whether you have dance moves to go with those.
Yeah,
I
but
see.
yeah, but I love listening to music really, and just chilling with friends.
Okay.
You know, getting to meet new people. I really love socializing,
Yeah.
getting to meet new people. Yeah.
Okay. So what? That answer leads me to my next question. Getting to meet new people. Are you married?
Not yet.
Not yet. So I'm just looking at how daunting a task it is going to be for you because you have the whole of Africa to choose from.
Wow. I know, right? I don't know where we should channel those applications to review the applications
I've got
of
some
the
spare
potential.
time. I've got some spare time. I can handle that, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so maybe you should tell them what would disqualify them or what would qualify them.
Or what would qualify them? No, just bring your applications
Yeah.
to Lexis, and
There
he'll
you go.
review them, and he'll let you know who's made it.
I've got work to do, and I'll
You
deliver.
have work to do.
Hopefully, I'll deliver a Ghanaian man. Anyway, it's been great spending time with you.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed this conversation. Maybe to wrap up, you can actually speak to the youth of Africa who are watching you, who are listening to you right now. Anything on your heart you'd want to share with them? Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lexis. And what I'd like to say to the youth of Africa is that come, let us walk on this journey together. This is our time for impact, our time for change, our time to be heard. We are the generation of now, and we're going to ensure that we create a better future for all to live in the Africa that we want to see, and in Africa that will look at the development of its people, especially the youth.
There you go. Chido Cleopatra Mpemba. You're amazing.
Thank
I'm
you.
so happy you made time.
Thank you very
bless
much.
you.
Thank you.
And we'll support you in your efforts to help the youth of Africa.
Thank you very
Bless
much.
you.
What's
I'm
up?
Lexis Bill, and this has been Personality Profile. On behalf of the team, would say thank you so much for spending time with us. Of course, the videos are always on our Joy Entertainment pages and our YouTube pages. You can actually get to live this conversation, this wonderful conversation that we've had with the Africa Union's Commission's envoy on youth, Miss Chido Cleopatra Mpemba. Have a great evening.